You put your oil in this top container, which is purely a strainer, and let it go down into the drum and let it sit for a day or two, preferably. The solids and the rubbish sinks to the bottom, which can be drained off at intervals with this tap into a bucket. The less dirty stuff comes through this system, through a strainer, which is fairly large. It gets all the particles, and through this pipe to a cam lock fitting, which connects to the second component. The strainer can be drained off at intervals through this tap, just into a bucket, and is unscrewed to clean it out periodically. But the idea of this settling system is to let the bottom 300 ml collect all the heavy solids, which can be drained off into a bucket through this large connection. The cam lock fitting from stage 1 connects into this cam lock here, and by turning the valve on, we can suck it using the motor up and into the tank, and from where we then continue to process it. This valve here I put on just to allow you to suck from a different source if needed. It just needs a fitting here of whatever suits, and by opening the valve you can suck from another source, a jerry can with a lead or something like that. The valve is on the bottom of the tank here. This gives you your source if you want to suck into the tank, and here is our gear pump that provides the pressure up to about 120 psi. When processing, these valves are turned off. The oil travels through the tank, through a small strainer just to collect any wayward bits of rubbish to protect the pump. Through the pump, comes up this line. It goes through a pair of normal engine oil Z9 filters, again just to help the process and to take out the big chunks. These are easily replaceable, they're $5 each. It then goes into the housing where we have a pressure gauge and we have a bypass gauge valve. This valve allows you to bleed excess pressure so as not to over pressurize the centrifuge itself. The centrifuge is rated to 80 psi. I frequently run it up to 90, even a bit more, and this bleed off valve allows you to control the pressure depending on the thickness of the oil. When the oil's thick and cold, it does get to pressure, and when it's thin, such as now when it's mostly diesel just for the trial, when it's thin oil you do not get to full pressure, but we'll see that next. Okay, running the pump. All of the fluid is currently travelling into here and straight out through the bypass. If we close the valve, now we're forcing all of the pressure into the centrifuge, and there we are at 80 psi, which will drop off. We're only running diesel, which is very thin. Now, the waste from, or the flow from the centrifuge flows down this pipe and back into the drum, and if you listen you'll hear the centrifuge coming up to speed. So the maximum pressure we're getting now is only about 60 psi, and that's because I'm currently running it on diesel, not engine oil, and diesel is much thinner, therefore it doesn't hold the pressure. And so this is what we now allow it to do. The flow is all coming down here, just to show if we relieve some pressure here, then we lose some pressure out of the system. And now we allow this to run for a couple of hours and it just recirculates.